It was supposed to be her moment. The lights, the stage, the adrenaline of the audience holding their breath, everything had been built for Zoe Andrews. At least, that's what she believed. She had worked for it. Practiced every night, until her throat burned and her feet throbbed. She memorized every note of the final song, choreographed every spin. This was the biggest talent competition in the state. A golden ticket for one high school student to win a scholarship and national exposure. Zoe was ready. She wasn't just chasing a trophy, she was chasing validation, and then she showed up. Kennedy Blake, the girl no one saw coming. Zoe first noticed her sitting in the back row of auditions, arms folded, a lazy bun falling over her shoulder, not even clapping for the others. She hadn't been on the rehearsal list all week. In fact, she was a late entry, added just hours before the final show, a wild card. She won't be a problem, Zoe whispered to her friend, Maddie, backstage. She's probably just another TikTok singer. Maddie nodded, clearly more nervous than Zoe. I mean, who enters a state talent show and doesn't rehearse with everyone? But Zoe wasn't just confident, she was certain. Her turn on stage was electric. The spotlight beamed down as she hit every note in her power ballad version of Rise Up, her voice climbing like a firework into the rafters. The crowd erupted at the end. Standing ovation. She walked off stage, flushed with pride, heart racing with adrenaline, eyes sparkling as the MC announced the final performer of the night. Kennedy Blake, performing an original song. There was a pause in the crowd, confused murmurs. Original songs were a gamble. Who picks that in front of judges expecting a safe hit? Zoe crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair, smug. And then Kennedy walked out. No glitter, no sequins, just ripped jeans, a flannel shirt, and a battered acoustic guitar that looked older than the auditorium itself. She didn't say a word to the audience. She just sat on the stool, adjusted her mic, and started strumming. The first chord was so soft, the room instinctively fell silent. And when she began to sing, it was as if time had slowed. Her voice was raw, not technically perfect. Not polished, but honest, pure, like something pulled straight out of a heartbreak no one saw coming. The lyrics, they weren't about winning or rising up, they were about loss. About letting go of the idea that you always have to be strong. I've worn every smile like armor, told myself I'm fine with scars, but tonight I'm not a fighter. Just a girl with a broken heart. Zoe's chest tightened. The melody drifted like a whisper across the theater, and you could feel it in your bones. There was no choreography, no dramatic lighting, just Kennedy, a girl who didn't even want the spotlight, spilling her soul like she didn't care who was listening. When the song ended, there was a beat of stunned silence before the crowd stood up, not in excitement, but reverence. People weren't cheering, they were crying. Even the judges looked shaken. Zoe sat frozen. This couldn't be happening. Kennedy didn't even try. After the show, Zoe avoided the green room. She needed air. She walked out behind the auditorium, past the dumpsters. Behind the shadows of the big oak trees where no one could see her cry, she heard footsteps behind her. I'm sorry, said a quiet voice. Zoe turned, startled. Kennedy stood there, guitar slung over her shoulder. No arrogance, no smugness, just sincerity in her tired eyes. You don't have to apologize, Zoe said, wiping her cheek, trying to gather herself. You earned it. Kennedy stepped forward, hesitant. I didn't plan to. I wasn't even going to show up. My brother, he used to play that song with me. He passed away 2 months ago. That was his guitar. Zoe blinked. Kennedy looked down. He told me once that music isn't about sounding perfect. It's about telling the truth. And I guess I finally told mine. Zoe felt her pride dissolving into something deeper. Empathy, respect. You didn't steal the spotlight, Zoe whispered. You shared something real, and that's why they listened. Kennedy looked surprised by the kindness. Your performance was incredible, by the way. I couldn't look away. Zoe let out a shaky laugh. Thanks. I wanted to be unforgettable. Kennedy smiled gently. You were. The winner was announced 15 minutes later. Kennedy, of course. The trophy was handed to her, amid roaring applause. She didn't cry. She just looked up at the ceiling with a small smile, like she was thanking someone far away. Zoe clapped, too, harder than most. And when Kennedy glanced her way, Zoe gave her a thumbs up. For the first time in months, she felt free. Not because she lost, but because she realized something. She'd been trying to prove herself to the world, but Kennedy, she'd been healing, and in doing so, she reminded everyone that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the bravest kind of strength. A year later, Zoe released her own single, this time, an original. Not to impress anyone, just to say something true. Kennedy was the first to share it online, writing, "Zoe taught me how to perform. I just reminded her how to feel. We're not here to win. We're here to connect." And the world listened. Final message. Sometimes, the loudest voice in the room doesn't come from power, but from honesty. You don't have to steal the spotlight to be seen. Just be real, and the right people will find you.